The way I'm viewing the AI race dynamic right now is from economic incentives and governance structures. Companies are trying to build artificial general intelligence, or as OpenAI defines it, a highly autonomous system that outperforms humans at most economically valuable work. They're doing this because there are economic incentives to do so. It would be easier to do things if these AI systems were more capable. The other lens is governance structures. OpenAI was unique in its founding in that it knew building AGI would come with strong economic incentives and pressure from investors that could sway their mission of AGI going well for humanity. That's why they set it up as a nonprofit. They want to be accountable to humanity as a whole and not for the benefit of shareholders. OpenAI's founding was also motivated by what they saw as Google, who is responsible to shareholders, should not be the one who builds what might be the most powerful technology ever created. However, in 2019, they realized that they needed to raise a lot more money to build their technology. So they restructured the company into a nonprofit that controls a for-profit entity, which could raise money from investors. But they were very careful that the nonprofit's duty was to humanity, and that the for-profit was only raising money that made sense to the nonprofit's mission. An interesting point here is the capped investor profits. That means when AGI is wildly successful, investors will get a lot of money, but any returns beyond that cap are owned by the original OpenAI nonprofit to benefit everyone. It was very clear that the nonprofit was still in control and owned the technology. But this time, OpenAI wants to restructure again. They want to turn the for-profit entity into a public benefit corporation. With this plan, the PBC would be control of the company, and the original nonprofit would just become a well-funded foundation for other charitable projects. That means the nonprofit will lose control of an advanced AI company. And for what? They already own OpenAI, but by changing into a public benefit corporation, the nonprofit would just be swapping their control for shares in the company they already own. That change removes the most important thing about OpenAI. The letter says, the most significant differentiator between OpenAI and its competitors is that it is a nonprofit with a duty to put humanity's interests first. The most important consequence from becoming a public benefit corporation is the shift in legal duty. The incentives would change from enforceable duty to the public to no fiduciary duty at all to the public, with an enforceable requirement to make profit for shareholders. And this is the critical difference in accountability. While attorneys general can sue a nonprofit to protect its mission, for a PBC, directors owe no fiduciary duties enforceable by or on behalf of the public benefits beneficiaries. Instead, the only people with the power to sue would be the shareholders, and they would sue to make the company focus more on profit, not less. The letter asks the most important questions here. If the new for-profit company takes actions that are clearly deleterious to humanity, who will have recourse? And if OpenAI builds AGI, who will control and own it? Right now it belongs to a nonprofit for humanity's benefit. After this, it will belong to investors. I'm especially impressed with this letter because it is so measured and sober. It doesn't take an adversarial position, it just uses quotes from the company's own leadership to hold up a mirror, showing them removing the very safeguards they created. All of these safeguards that they committed to and said were important just a few years ago would be removed. I think the point about where the incentives point to and whether they're making credible commitments is important. The status quo is to always follow incentives, especially in incentives as money. Some people say it was all inevitable. OpenAI was always going to get swayed by money, and there are no governance structures that could help. But I think this is incorrect. This letter was written in April 2025, and OpenAI announced they restructured to a PBC in May 2025. I believe their prior commitment and this letter trying to hold them accountable made it so at least the nonprofit still owns the public benefit corporation, even though they removed the capped profits. Even then, a huge question from the letter remains. What value would the nonprofit receive in exchange for any changes to the profit cap structure? We don't know. And it's crazy what this means. Does it mean that Thrive Capital, which owns 5% of OpenAI, will still own 5% of all the value in the universe when OpenAI's AGI swallows up galaxies? Even when AI companies have tried to make mechanisms like responsible scaling policies, I'm still not sure how they'll do the things they say they'll do. And this OpenAI story is an excellent example. The very leaders who foresaw the dangers of profit-driven AGI are the ones trying to remove the exact safeguards they created to prevent it. This shows that when it comes to ensuring AI safety, good intentions and public promises are enough. The real commitment isn't in a press release, it's buried in the legal details of a company's corporate structure, and governance is where promises meet reality. So the question we're left with isn't just about OpenAI, but about the entire field. Who has control? Where do the incentives point? And who holds them accountable? These are the questions that will ultimately determine if AGI benefits all of humanity or just a few shareholders. Part of why I'm making these videos is to explore these questions by digging into documents just like this letter. And thank you for joining me on this journey.